Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to the Lifeonaire Show, where we help people make more, work less, create a life they love. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. I am joined by my partner in crime, Polish Peter.
Well, I'll be careful. Hold on. You talking about partner in crime. I don't know what kind of crime you do over here. Over there, but over here, it's pretty good, okay?
Good. Is there such thing as good crime? Like, I'm confused by the statement.
I don't know, but you keep your crime over there, okay?
Right. We don't want immigration to get called on you. I get it. That's totally fine.
The immigration is good. They're good friends of mine, okay? They're not. I am a U.S. citizen, okay?
Right.
Just so you know, U.S. citizen.
If Big Brother is listening right now, Peter is an official citizen, right? Okay.
Yeah. If you have a Big Brother listening to our podcast, man, we're making it.
I know, dude. I think maybe we have to include like those kind of things to get the government listening to us, so we can get more listeners. It might not be the right kind of listeners, though. I don't know if we want to do that.
That's right. Yeah.
So, hey, man, listen. So, Josh Gierach, right? We had him on the show not too long ago. And we got him back on the show because we want to talk with him specifically about real estate investing as it pertains to apartments. Now, Josh is a guru when it comes to apartments. He's been doing this for many, many years. And he's going to share on this episode what he's learned through the trenches. He's going to talk about his tips for acquisition, for management, for metrics, for dealing with tenants. It's really going to be an awesome episode, and I'm excited to listen to this myself.
Yeah, I'm excited about this episode because here's the thing. If you're interested in apartments, this is a guy to listen to, because guess what? There's a lot of people out there who talk about having, 1,000 apartments or whatever the case may be, but they are not living their vision. This guy is actually living his vision, right? He invests, he's got over 800 units, but at the same time, he spends like 20, 30 hours a week actually working at it, right? The rest, he can travel, he can spend time with his wife and all those kinds of things. So he's got it figured out, obviously, right?
Yeah, huge, great point to make there. Let's jump into the interview right now. Here we go. Josh Gierach, Apartment Investing 101. Josh, what's up, man? Welcome back to the Lifeonaire Show.
Good to be back.
It's been a long time. And so
you're still in Brazil.
I'm still in Brazil, and it's the same sunset. Can you believe it? It is still in progress.
We're recording at the same time.
This is amazing. Well, listen, for those of you who, if you missed the first episode with Josh, go back and listen to that. It's going to give you a lot of context in Josh's story and how it's going to play into today's conversation. Today, we are going to talk about specifically investing in apartments. Josh is we had a couple self-described terms in the last episode, but let's just put it this way. Josh is well entrenched in the apartment investing niche. He has over 800 units. And so we're going to pick his brain here for you and kind of give you an overview of the apartment investing and everything from acquisition to management to maybe we can even talk about resale or value add stuff. So Josh, tell me, the first thing I want to know is like, one of the questions that people ask me is like, hey, can I start with apartments, or really should I start off somewhere else? Like, what is your opinion on that?
Oh man, maybe
could somebody start small?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the beginning, the smaller stuff, it's easier to get into. I would say, actually, the more I think about it, you could edit all of my mumbling here and just say, yes, you should try to start small.
Okay.
So often people, they jump in and they say, geez, I'm going to go take down, they've never done a deal before or managed anything. And they say, I want to go put together 100 unit property and go buy it. We'll come up with the investors, we'll put it together. And I think, oh my goodness, you probably won't succeed, but if you do, you might not be happy you did, because there's so many potential pitfalls. And you can make the same pitfalls exist in the smaller stuff. It's just that there's less exposure. So if you step in a stumble on 100 units, your stumble is a $500,000 stumble potentially, which you might, if this is your first deal, you can't survive that. But if you stumble on a duplex, your stumble is $5,000, maybe $1,000. Okay, you can survive that. So yeah, start small.
So you'd recommend
a duplex?
Yeah, like a duplex, a tri, a quad, something like that?
I do. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of duplexes. If I was redoing it, if I was starting over from scratch and doing it just for lifestyle design, and by lifestyle design, I mean so I can travel and have a life and work as little, I would only buy duplexes. That's it. I wouldn't touch the large complexes at all.
Really? Okay.
They're a totally different animal. I would just play in duplexes, and I'd make sure they were real close, driving wise. And that's it. They're easy to rent. There's no common hallways. There's no snow to deal with. I'm in Wisconsin, so we got to clear snow, but the residents do that. There's no lawn to mow because the residents do that, and no hallways to clean, or opportunities for tenants to be angry with each other. There's some, but it's much less when you're not bumping into each other in hallways. They're great, and there's no utilities to pay. The tenants pay that too. They're just a no-brainer, and everyone loves living in it. It's like one step shy of a house, of a single-family home, but you get the shared roof and all the shared benefits.
Man, I am fascinated that you answered that way, and I'm intrigued as well. And so what you're saying is like you still get some of the benefits of like economies of scale by having these together, but yet not all the same headaches that are associated with a larger unit or facility.
Yep. Yeah.
Nope.
Single family. If you go down to a single family, you don't have the economy of scale, and but you have all those other benefits. But you lose economy. And you're now, when in the purchase, you're competing with the marketplace, the homeowner, purchaser who's going to live in it, who ends up bidding it up to a point where it just doesn't make sense financially. As soon as you step up to the duplex world, you cut out a lot of competitors. Obviously, the advantage to going up to the bigger units is you have less and less competitors, but it's a different animal when it comes to managing. It's a different game. Now you're playing with actual sophisticated investors, whereas the duplex world, usually they're not nowhere near as sophisticated as guys buying $5 and $10 million properties.
Right. So listen, so this episode is an apartment investing. You just told me a whole bunch of reasons why I should not be doing apartment investing. So my next question is, why apartment investing? What's so sexy about that?
Yeah. So what the original question was, where would you suggest people start?
Yeah.
And that is with a duplex. Get your head around it. But make no mistake, if you're actually successful, you're going to want to increase your economies of scale. And the only way to do that is going up to multi-unit apartment complexes. At the place we're at, we don't even like taking on stuff less than 100 units. It's all the same amount of work. It takes the same amount of work to buy a 100 unit as it does to buy a duplex. It takes less work for us to manage it because we have a system in place and we have managers who handle it. The other thing is, if you think about it, as you grow and you end up with more money. So a duplex down payment, let's say it's 50 grand. If you have 50 grand into a duplex, that's fine. If you stretch to come up with 50 grand, okay. But at some point, you got to think, I have an extra $1 million I need to get invested. That's a lot of duplexes you got to find. That's a lot of deals you got to put together. That's a lot of work that are to manage, that are spread out all over. That's a lot just to get the same amount of return on your $1 million. So you're inevitably going to outgrow duplexes because you need to get to the economy of scale and you need to be able to put more money to work. It's just, that's how it goes. You can only fit so many little green houses on your Monopoly board till you need to go to a red hotel. It's
right.
The way it works.
So say somebody is at that stage, they've done a little bit of duplex investing to get their feet wet and learn a little bit about management. Is it typically like, what's the next step? Do they need to go to a quad or can they go to a 10 or 12? What's the next manageable bite for most people, or 20 unit? Like what's your next kind of step for most people?
Yeah. Once you got a few duplexes, my personal recommendation would be to skip the quads.
Okay.
I don't think that they give you a sufficient economy of scale to make it worth stepping up in that whole new breed. So I would say get a few duplexes under your belt, know what you're doing management-wise, and then jump up to a 10 at least. Maybe an 8, let's just say 8 and up. But the further up you can go, pull together a few investors. You've already proved you can manage units, and the banks will be much more friendly with you. you might have a little bit of a challenge going up as high as a 50 unit straight from, say, 2 or 3 duplexes. But even getting up to a 16, bringing an investor or whatever, that's not a bad place. It's not a bad place. And you benefit from the economies of scale, 16 units all in one location, especially if they're in the same mixes of all your duplexes. It's pretty slick.
Yeah. So listen, so my next question for you is, what exactly do you mean by have your figure out management part? Because for someone who's doing, duplexes, him figuring out his management might be very different from what you know about figuring out management. So what exactly does that mean?
Well, this is my personal opinion based on an extensive amount of experience.
Right.
I could be wrong. So take it for what it's worth. There are no good property management companies. I'm the only one.
Yeah.
Maybe there are others in other parts of the country or the world. But at least in Madison, I am literally the only one who will also manage other people's properties. There are other good management companies, but they'll only handle their own. Because inevitably, everyone gets to a place, if you're doing it right, where you have enough money. You don't need to use other investors. You don't need to manage other people's properties. You don't want to deal with them. So you just manage your own. That is how it ends up going. The only people who continue to manage other people's properties are people who suck at it or have been irresponsible financially and can't afford to have and don't have their own. So all that to say is the management is a key piece. And when you're small, that's one of the incentives to grow, because you're either managing it yourself plus maybe a full-time job or just you. And my experience is once you get to about 15 units, it starts really hurting the rest of your life and consuming more, especially if you still have a full-time job. Once you get, if they're all yours, you could, depending on how you structure it, maybe you want to quit your job at that point, but it might be a little tight. Usually people want to get up a little bit further. The thing that people discount is just there's some work to managing them, and there's no way around it. They're active investments, and you can hire management companies to do it. You just got to know that they're not going to do it as well as you. So what I've found is the way that makes sense is I actually love it. And I would tell people, if you love it, absolutely build it and build a management company around it. Or at least get big enough where you can hire someone else to handle the day-to-day stuff, which to me, 50 units, and you can very comfortably get somebody, a full-time maintenance guy and a part-time manager to handle leasing and showings. And that's a good life. You're pretty liberated at that point.
Assuming there's no huge renovations that need to go into it. Say an investor starts and they get their first property and say it's a 20 unit or 15 unit. Assuming there's no crazy rehab or development that needs to be done, what does an average work week look like as far as the hours someone needs to put in to have this thing be successful, if they're managing it themselves? And so let me also make sure I understood correctly. So you think that around the 15 unit stage is when you got to start thinking of doing some other things other than you just managing it? Is that where you start to see that impact on life, or is it at 50? I want to make sure I understood correctly.
It was for me, 15. It was 15. That's when I lost the hair.
Okay.
So it started at 15, and then it went all. I didn't leave my job. I admittedly had my wife helping me, but I didn't leave until I had 84.
Okay.
So that gap between 15 and 84 was
that sounds
where
rough.
I lost all this.
Yeah.
It was a lot. Again, my wife was only working another side job 20 hours a week, so the rest of her time was helping. There's no way we could have made it to 84 without that
her
being the case. But 15, when we both had full-time jobs, that was a lot. That was
how many hours a week do you think that someone is going to dump into that?
So my general rule, it depends. It depends on if it's duplexes or if it's all one single 20 unit complex. A 20 unit complex, I bet I could manage for five hours a week. And then you've got maintenance, which if it's running smooth, it's probably 10 hours a week at most.
Are there any rules of thumb for that you've found that have been?
Yeah. So my general rule is on a larger scale, and you can work it down. So I say a full-time property manager is 150 units. So that's 40 hours a week. That's 50 in the summers and 30 in the winters, because most of our turnover is in the summers. And then usually the rule for maintenance guys is somewhere, depending on the condition of the property, between 40 and 60 units for one full-time maintenance guy that they can handle. We've stretched it to 70 units for a maintenance guy, or 80, but they're definitely not doing any projects. They're just maintaining. And then you have to contract a lot more out to fill in that gap. But it can totally be done. You're just going to end up contracting more out.
Got it. Okay. And so someone's making this leap. They get their first, say, 20 unit building. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see brand new managers make? And actually, let's pause that question. How does somebody find a 20 unit apartment? Where are people doing direct mail for this? Is it LoopNet? Like, where is it off market stuff? Where have you had success?
So the answer to where I've had success is different than, it might have changed now. Now I have some momentum. I have a little bit of a reputation, and things just come to me. I haven't pursued anything in years and years and years. They just show up because they know that I'm an active buyer in town. At the very beginning, I always tell people, make friends with the bankers and the commercial real estate brokers. Just start there and get on their lists, every single one. Make sure they know you're a buyer and that you're looking and what you're looking for. And then stay on their radar, kind of stay on the horizon there for them. Don't just reach out to them once and then never talk to them again. Like, go out to eat, at least twice a year or something, and just keep tabs, or at least give them a call. But a lot of our business, a lot of our deals is just from those relationships, because I'm going out, hanging out with the bankers in town, and they give me a heads up. Hey, so-and-so is kind of talking, they might want to sell. You might want to give them a call, but you didn't hear it from me. And the same with brokers. They're always giving me the heads up on deals. Hey, it looks like I'm going to get this listing. It's still on the DL right now. Here's the basic rundown of it. And as soon as they get it signed, then they call me as well and say, hey, I just got it signed. You're literally the first person to hear about it. Let me send you over the package. Or sometimes they'll even tell me before they have the package, and we'll schedule a time for me to go take a look at it. So they haven't published anything. By the time they've published it, which is usually 2 or 3 weeks later, they've sent out a mailer with their new listing that they have bragging about it. I've already run all the numbers. I've walked through it already, and I've got an offer on the table before anyone else is even hearing about it. And it's simply because of those relationships that we're right there. We're on there.
Wow.
Right next.
And it doesn't take that much effort. It just takes being consistent, being a person, being a human, and showing your interest and getting to know you. And you mentioned kind of putting together numbers and analyzing the deal. How is this a cap? Like, how do you analyze a property? What are some of the numbers you're looking at?
Again, this is why I recommend people start in duplexes, because they're very simple to manage. I have a basic rule of thumb on a duplex that the expenses should be 30% of the income, of the gross income. So you got a 70% margin there, of which your mortgage comes out of that. And so you can kind of run numbers pretty simply. Or the other way to look at it is, if one side, in my rule, should cover all of the mortgage payment, mortgage or principal, plus at least half of the property taxes. And you can run quick, easy numbers that way. Once you get up to the multifamily, it's a little more complex because there's so many more variables. So my answer is, it depends. If it's a property that's been well maintained, my expense ratio is probably only going to be 40% of gross. But if it's not been, I need to budget that ahead of time, and I'm going to have expense rates of 60 or 70%, and probably not make anything for the first 2 or 3 years while we're getting it stabilized. As a general rule, I look for at least an 8% cap rate if you're looking at caps, but that doesn't tell the whole story. The condition of the property, the location, how easy is it to rent, how fast can I raise rents to get to an 8%? It might be only at a 6 or a 7 cap, but if I know I can get better rents in that area from those apartments once they're fixed up, I can get it to an 8 or maybe even a 10. There's just a lot of more variables.
Okay. And so
that's my best 8%. Can I get an 8%? Because that usually means in current interest rates world, I'm getting a 10% cash on cash return, which is also my benchmark. My money demands a 10% cash on cash return. It won't settle for anything less. It's a little spoiled, I guess.
Right. Well, and so that's valuable. So do you typically go for value add units, or are you looking for ones that are already kind of in good shape and they're ready to go and they're stabilized? Like, what do you prefer?
I like classes.
So both good questions. So I'll answer the class first, and then I'll go back to quality. So I love the B class stuff. I only have one A class property, and it's fine. It's been doing great. But the B class is where it's at, because in a downturn, those people are still working. They're still doing fine. In a downturn, everyone just goes down a level. So the people who were renting A, now they're renting B. The people who were renting B, maybe they stay, or maybe they're renting a C. Everyone just goes down. Is the A people that they get clobbered. So I'm real careful going into an A property, and it's nice because usually they're well maintained. But on the flip side, you might have to make concessions and rent in an economic downturn. And so you need to budget that in and be a little more careful. So I love the B class market. I'll buy a C and I'll bring it up to a B, but I won't stay in C. That's no fun. That's rough territory. Then as far as rehabs, I love it. I love fixer-upper projects. There's usually some really good deals there, taking on somebody else's problem, somewhere that they failed, and I know we can succeed. I don't recommend that for starting out, though. I think there's real estate has the tendency to get expensive. You buy it, you think it's going to cost 50 grand, and it turns out to be 500 grand. Those things happen often. It just ends up more. Even if you buy a house, everybody knows it. It's like owning a boat or anything else. You end up with things breaking, and next thing you know, you got to put a new roof on, a new siding, a new water heater, a new this and that, and all that stuff adds up really, really quick. So I would say get a little experience under your belt before you take on a fixer-upper. But once you got some experience, I think that's usually where the best deals are.
Right. Well, and then you also have the benefit of, hey, this is a value add. This thing was worth 400 grand when I got it. I put this work in, put in 200, but now it's worth 900. And so you if you decide to sell that at some point, you've built in that profit. What about, talk to me now, so that's anything else that people should be looking for on the acquisition side of things? And I know this is a far more detailed topic that we can cover in 5 minutes.
Sure.
Are there any kind of big top level things that people need to look at for?
So one, don't rush it. Just relax. If it's not a good deal, it's not a good deal. It's okay. It's like surfing. Anyone who knows how to surf or has surfing experience, the waves come in sets. So usually it's four waves to a set, and then there's the pause. You don't paddle out during the waves. You're going to get clobbered, or certainly at least get exhausted. You paddle out in the break in between. Real estate's the same way. You don't have to make every deal work. It's okay. There's always going to be another one, and they often come in sets. You'll have a group of deals that come and take one or two. Try to take all of them. Then understand there's going to be a calm. There's going to be a break. Be patient. Don't try to catch a wave that's not really a wave, or try to catch a property or make it work and stretch it. You're going to regret it. The other side of it, though, is also really great. If you do stretch it, if you overpay, that's really what I mean. If you do overpay on a property, time is on your side. Real estate is spectacular to right all wrongs. If you stick with it, every month the mortgage is getting paid down. Every month you're improving the condition of it. Every month rents, every year generally rents are inching up. So time is on your side to correct and right any mistake. If you overpay for something, you just might get, instead of getting a 10% return, you got a 5%. It's still a win. You still got a return. So I think that's, sometimes I am a little more cautious because I'm always chasing a really good deal, but time corrects mistakes. So, just plan for the long haul.
Got it. So now let's say that the deal is done. Someone has a deal. What are the most common mistakes that you see new managers make when it comes to managing an apartment?
The first mistake is hiring a bad manager. Okay. A successful landlord, I can't believe I'm going to put this on recording. A successful landlord cares about people, but they're not going to let a sob story sway them. I've seen a lot of managers, a lot of owners give way to sob stories when hiring staff or when renting apartments. And you've just got to be, the bigger you get, the more you got to be by the book anyway, or you're going to go to jail. But at the beginning, you got to, across the board, you got to be by the book, because you just don't want, listen to the sob stories, man. You're going to end up losing money. And either if they pay their bills on time, they've got good credit, they've got good landlord references, and they've got no criminal history and all these things, everything's spotless, rent to them. If there's a problem, but they have a reason, they've got an excuse, don't. It's just a trap.
So what I hear is kind of like the same thing as like, don't be a motivated buyer, don't be a motivated leaser, or whatever that term would be. Like, don't take the first. Yeah. Don't take the first.
My mentor's mentor always said a vacant apartment is better than an apartment rented to someone not paying. Leave it vacant.
Yep.
Improve your marketing, whatever. But if you rent it and then they're not paying, so you got a month or two, then you got to go through the eviction process, and then it's another month, and then they destroy the place on the way out. You're down 10 or 15 grand on one unit, just like that. You would have been better off leaving it empty.
Right. What else? Any other big mistakes you see people making?
I thought that was pretty good.
That's a big one. I wasn't sure if there's any other ones. So tell me, are you somebody who lets people know that you're the owner, or do you prescribe to the whole like, hey, I'm just a guy like that the owner like has me, or do you not even do anything? Do they not even see you?
Well, there's no rule here. People can do whatever you want. I don't have any good or bad lessons on it. At the beginning, I tried to. I've done both. The honest answer is in both cases. As we've grown now, we have 40 staff now, so I don't know many of the tenants. At the beginning, I knew everyone, and everyone knew me, so there was no hiding who I was. Now I could hide, except that whenever there's a difficult decision to be made that a tenant might not be happy for, I tell my managers, you've got to be the one in between. You've got to stay on the side of the resident, because you have to deal with them and live with them, and make me out to be the bad guy or the reason that some decision is negative, so that you can stay on the good side and just kind of be the go-between. Lobby for the tenant, but remember, I sign your checks. And as long as they can navigate that successfully, they'll stay friends with all the tenants and be able to continue to do their job. And all that is to say that in those cases, yeah, I'm the owner. I'm the bad guy. I'm the one who made the decision. Don't be mad at the manager. Be mad at me. And
you're like a figurehead.
Yeah, I'm just the guy to complain against, I guess. And it's fine. Again, we've got a lot of great tenants. It's really not an issue. It's only an issue when we take over a property and we got to clean up somebody else's mistakes. But anything that we've owned for longer than a year, certainly longer than 2, these are people that are made it through our screening. They're great humans, and I'm happy and privileged to serve them and protect them and give them a place of of peace and safety. I think that's along those lines. That's one of the things that really motivates me. And I think it grieves me when I see other people get into the apartment world just to make money. And then they see these tenants as just clogs in a machine to make them money. That pisses me off to no end. And I think those people should not be in real estate. I'm happy to run them out of business and run them out of town. They should be removed completely. I have no good feelings for them. You should be in real estate, in the apartment business, to serve and to provide these people with spectacular housing and care for them and give them peace and safety. This is their home they're trusting you with. There's very few things that are more important to a person than their home. So I take it really seriously, and I'm really proud of the opportunity to serve these wonderful, wonderful people.
Well, man, that's where I think it's made you successful, is, you really love what you do as well as the people you serve. And so now it's not the same as somebody who doesn't have that passion, and you'll kick their butt every single time. Now, one thing you mentioned, though, I want to ask you about is, you mentioned, these wonderful people that you serve. Is there any truth to the correlation that I've heard of people said, hey, people who live in apartments are a little bit more unruly, or they're a little less financially responsible, or a little harder to deal with? Or have you had any of that experience? Like, so I've heard the criticism like, hey, apartments are great, but it's a different quality person versus renting a single family home. You would say that's not true?
No. There's great, wonderful people that rent apartments. Shoot, I think it leans more towards the Lifeonaire lifestyle, to be honest. You got no responsibilities, no effort. You don't own. You can just jump ship anytime. No way. I'm all for it. A lot of people, more and more these days, they don't want to own. They just want to rent.
Yeah.
And we remove the headache of home ownership from people. These people are still wonderful people. They just don't want to deal with the headache of it or the burden of it, or their lifestyle is more transient. They might take a job some other city, whatever. We accommodate for that, and we serve a real need. That these people aren't any less. That's not to say that a poorly managed property wouldn't give a bad rap to the rest.
Yeah.
If you're renting to problem people, but that has not, and those problem people usually can't afford a house, but that doesn't mean the reverse. And to be honest, I'll even go further. Sorry, I just got excited. I would also say that we've actually had more challenges from homeowners than we have with our tenants.
Really? All right.
Yep. Because I can't get rid of them.
Well, I'm not following.
They crank they own the home, so they don't care. They crank their music up loud, and I can't do anything about it. Their dog barks all hours of the night. I've got an apartment complex. My residents' dogs are being totally quiet and responsible, and they're not cranking their music. Meanwhile, the homeowner next door has their bass blaring, and they're pissing off all of our residents.
Oh, homeowner next to your apartment complex.
What's that?
The homeowner next to your apartment complex.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Dude, I never thought of that. That's a super relevant point. Yeah, I guess you got a lot of people together that maybe it brings out the best in people to some extent, and everybody kind of works together, and they realize together as a community, it's important to have that sense of respect for each other.
Yeah.
I like this conversation, because a lot of things that I'm hearing is stuff that you don't typically think about when you're looking to go and invest in those kinds of things, right? Like, do you actually look, when you're looking to invest in an apartment, do you look around the surrounding neighborhood as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But again, so if I was just starting, that matters everything. Now I go in and I just think, how fast can I buy the neighborhood? So that's our whole play, is let's go into a struggling neighborhood. Let's buy up as much as we can, and then we solve those problems. So there's a handful of neighborhoods or pockets that we have that we're easily the majority landlord and just plain owner in, and that solves a lot of those challenges when you own everything in a restricted area, or in an area.
So speaking of buying up neighborhoods and stuff, how are you funding your deals, and how would somebody brand new to this get going? Is it would you recommend going the bank route, going private equity partners, debt investors? Like how do you, what's your experience been and what do you recommend?
So there's a million ways to skin the cat. I mean, you can do it however you want. The traditional way that we have historically done it is we have raised money for 20% of the purchase price, the down payment, and then the mortgage was the remaining 80%, which stayed on the property. And I would personally guarantee, as all banks, until you get up over several million, all banks require. And I've been fine with that. And that's part of my contribution. Initially, I did all these deals for free. Now I take a commission for putting a deal together and personally guarantee and all of that. But the opportunity has been for investors to invest and come up with that 20% that we're buying a property at. So it's got both. You can play the game any other way you want. I've seen people raise the whole thing and not have a mortgage. I've seen the reverse where it's all debt. You just got to know that the more debt you have on a property, you have more exposure, and you better win. You better have the depth financially, personally, to make sure you can succeed with it without hurting yourself. And the flip side is if you have investors, then you need to know you've got an additional client. So you're not just serving your staff, you're not just serving your residents. Now you have to serve the investors as well. And each has different expectations of how you're going to perform for them and serve them. I happen to really love serving the investors as much as the residents, so it works out.
So when you have a private investor, is this something that you're giving them an X percentage of return, and they're a debt investor, or are you giving them a percentage of ownership and cash flow, or both?
Both. We've done either. You can structure it however you want. I've seen them. I've seen deals structured a million different ways, on all sorts of variations to it. It could be a preferred return, a guaranteed return, a debt position, or just straight up equity. We lean towards a straight up equity. I like having just long-term partners, but that's been our model. Is I just tell people straight up, this is forever. Like literally, you are going to put your money to work, and it's going to be here forever. You're going to get this return. We pay out every month, and so you're going to know you're going to get a 10%, for example, a 10% cash-on-cash return in perpetuity, and it will continue to increase as time goes on. As the mortgage gets paid down and rents go up, that amount monthly that you're getting will continue to increase. But that money's going to always be working. We're never going to do a payout. We're not selling. After I'm dead, you all can debate over what you want to do with it, and see if you can convince my wife to sell. But at this point, as long as I'm alive, that money's to work, and it needs to be doing its job, working. I'm not churning it. It's not a churning business where I'm turning it over left and right. No. We put it to work. We let it work consistently in that mine, in that gold mine, and just keep mining away forever.
And that's your strategy on all your deals. You're not necessarily picking certain projects specifically to rehab, resell, and then take that profit into the next one. But overall, you'd say your strategy is to kind of hold for the long term.
Yep. Yeah. There was one deal. I flipped a 16 unit just because it was not really in our area. And we made 250, 300 grand or something like that. That was just over, I don't know.
Okay.
220, 230, something like that. But that's not the normal. It's literally the only one in 15 years.
Okay. So let's say somebody gets their deal, they decide for themselves they are not interested in managing this and they have to go find somebody else. What are some of the criteria they should be looking for in a manager to try to screen somebody who might be good at this position?
Yeah. So one of my core philosophies is that the underlying foundation of a relationship, of a business relationship, is its contracts. So whenever I put a deal together, or on the management side, the way you structure the contracts has to incentivize the behavior you want. And it's the key to success or failure. And it's the stuff nobody sees, but makes or breaks the deal. On the management front, the way we structure it is we take a percentage of gross income, and that's it. All other expenses are passed on through to the property, and that incentivizes us to raise rents, but not raise rents too far that we can't rent the apartments. So it incentivizes us to keep it full. And it incentivizes us to maintain the property so that we can get the rents increased and keep it full and to serve everyone. What it does not incentivize us to do is make up work to do at the property. A lot of other management companies, they will charge you a percentage of gross, and it might be lower than, for example, what we would charge. But they'll also charge you for maintenance hours. For example, they're making a spread on all sorts of stuff, but maintenance is the most notorious. So they'll charge, say, $50 an hour for all maintenance done at your property. Meanwhile, they're paying their guys $20 to $25 an hour, and then they make up the spread. Now that's a really sweet gig for them because they're making a ton of money that you have no clue about, and are not checking. And maybe they're working at your property, maybe not. Maybe they're productive, maybe they're not. What's relevant is now you've incentivized them to put people to work at your property. And so often these management companies, they'll go in and they'll do it. They'll know your numbers because they're running the books, and they'll make it so that they eat up 90% of your profit. They'll just run it right up to the line. And then you have less profit because they don't care about your profit. They're worried about their profit. The whole contractual deal is their profit. So they'll put as many maintenance guys working at your property as they can get away with, to where maybe you're making a small portion just to keep you off their backs, and then the rest just gets disappeared in work that's getting done. Maybe it's actual work that's getting done, but still you've incentivized them to do more than what you would have done if you were the owner.
Dude, I'll never forget one of my rentals. This is actually when I stopped. I took over the management myself. Is I had I saw my monthly statement, and I saw an expense there for a stairway railing bracket, literally a bracket for a railing. The piece was $4. They charged me like $70 in labor. I was like, that's to screw this into. I'm like, that's it. I'm like, no, I'm done. And I was like, no, no way. I couldn't. I'm like, man, it was such a racket.
I've seen management companies charge for cell phone usage, and upcharging that. I've seen them, of course, for maintenance. I've seen for cleaning, for everything. They're just for lawn mowing, for snow removal. They start their own snow removal company, and they're charging what you would have paid if you had contracted out, but it doesn't cost even half as much to do it yourself. It's laziness. Oh, and then again, even if there's the flip side, whereas if they're not doing maintenance in-house, or I've seen this so many times too, they won't even have maintenance in-house. They'll just call an outside contractor for everything.
And you could have done that. Yeah,
or they could have done it. Any regular maintenance person could have done it. So you're dealing with an outside contractor, which means you're paying them $200 to just show up and look at it. And and then you're dependent on their schedule. So it's not getting done promptly. So the tenant's not happy, and the investor's definitely losing. And it's all just because you're lazy.
So and greedy, I think, too, sometimes.
Yeah. Again, you don't want a manager or a management company that's in it for the money.
Yeah.
Make no mistake. They should be owners as well as managing, so that they actually know how the owner thinks. And then the contract should be set up and structured like an owner would want, not like the management company would want. And there's plenty of room for everyone to win.
So the last thing I think I want to make sure we cover before we kind of wrap this up is give me some numbers as to industry averages on, I'd like to know, as a percentage of gross income, are there rules of thumb? So for instance, when somebody's running their numbers on acquisition, or they're trying to do some benchmarks against, like, hey, how we're performing towards the industry average. Like, for instance, I've seen people say, hey, account for a 10% vacancy. Is that, like, can you give me some industry averages on like, so we got vacancy, maintenance, repairs, like insurance, all these kinds of things.
Yeah. It fluctuates. It fluctuates with the economy and the market and each location. So that has to be understood. For example, last I checked, 8 to 10% was standard vacancy rate for St. Louis. However, in Madison, it's closer to 5%. And lately, I've heard of some areas being as low as 2%. Our running average has been for 15 years has been 2%. That's it. I'm pretty proud of that. But yeah. So, but whenever we're buying a property, we build in 5%.
Okay.
Or if it's in Madison, we build in just the standard 5%. If we were buying somewhere else, then we would probably, like St. Louis, then I would build in 10 because that's their standard, knowing that I can beat it. But I never build in the numbers that I know I can get. I just keep that. That's my room, my cushion for mistakes. I'll build in standard, whatever everyone else's numbers. I can at least do average. I'm pretty sure I can beat that.
How about
go ahead.
What are some of the other expenses that like, so industry averages?
So my general rule is I just will say 40% expense rate based on 40% of gross income. And then is expenses, not counting the mortgage.
So that's, and net operating income is 60% of gross. Okay.
Correct. That would be the NOI. But that would include taxes. But that's if utilities are not included. So if some of them are. So if heat's included, here in Wisconsin, it gets cold. And if heat's included, then it's 50%. So you've got an extra 10% just for heat. If heat's not included, it's 40%. If it's a duplex or something where you have 0 utilities, then it's 30%. And that's kind of my benchmark. That's for a stabilized property.
Okay.
If it has work to be done, then that's going to throw those numbers out the window for a short period.
So at the end of the day, let me make sure I understood correctly. Let's say someone has a 100-unit facility. Let's say their NOI. Well, let's say their gross. And I'm just gonna make up these numbers. These probably have no reality. Let's say you have $100,000 of gross income. That owner could expect somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 after expenses to be net operating income. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's what you have to play with on paying your mortgage.
Got it.
Or investors or whatever.
Got it. Okay. All right. That makes sense. And that helps people, like, I guess. And as far as improving, so someone has a property. What are some of the things, like, how do you know if you're doing a good job? Like, is it numbers based? Is it feedback based on how do you know you're doing a good job managing? Is it your rate of move outs or retention? What are some of the metrics that people use to really measure their business?
So we actually custom built, we hired a data analyst to custom build what we call our metrics tracking system. And we follow the EOS. We've very strictly, not very strictly, but vigilantly implemented the traction EOS model. And one of it is data and really tracking the numbers. So all of our managers are graded and compensated based on their actual results. Some of which so we're tracking percentage of occupancy. So and our general average is 97 to 99%. That is fully occupied. And then the next is our turnover, which we pay attention to because obviously more turnover of apartments means people are leaving. It also means more expenses. And it's just plain more expensive versus a tenant renewing and staying. Then we track the amount of time it takes to get a work order done and turned around from the time it's submitted. And our goal is to within 48 hours. We're tracking people who pay on time. We track people who pay online because it, again, just uses less energy of ours. And we are... I feel like there's one more thing that I'm forgetting, but that's the bulk of it. The only other thing that we're tracking but not built into our metric system is a net promoter score. which we haven't finished building out yet. But the idea is that it'll be a way to track reviews, positive and negative, and actually help to get us a pulse on how happy are people.
Got it. Well, man, I think that's really valuable because that gives people some objective measures to really, look at their operations and see, hey, what do we need to improve? Where are our weak points? Where are we strong? What's broken? What's missing? What's doing great? And then direct your efforts towards that.
Yep.
I know we covered a whole lot here, and there's a whole lot more for people to learn. How does somebody really start learning about this industry if they want to jump in? Is it really just a matter of doing it, or are there places that are recommended for them to check out?
The easiest no-brainer is obviously the local RIA, the Real Estate Investors Association. You're going to find lots of help there. Probably most of it's free. Kiyosaki has some great resources out there. I would assume most people would be familiar with that stuff. Grant Cardone, if you're looking at putting deals together, Grant Cardone came out with a book that literally breaks it down. He literally took every secret that took me 10, 15 years to accumulate, and he put it in a book. I literally read it, and I'm like, doggone it, I don't need to write a book on this anymore because he just told everyone everything. So it's all out there.
Do you know what the name of that book is by any chance?
I could look it up and get it to you in a minute, but it was, I don't. I've got it on my recommended reading list on my website, but I don't offhand. It was just something simple like Apartment Investing by Grant Cardone, or How to Put a Deal Together by Grant Cardone, or something like that.
Gotcha. All right. Hey, man. Well, listen, I really appreciate you being on the show a second time. And I know our listeners have benefited tremendously as well. I feel like I learned a lot about apartments as well, man. Peter, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to go out and get that first duplex. We're going to see what happens here. Peter, I'll rent to you with an application. I don't know if I'm going to let you in or not, but I'll consider renting to you.
Well, I'm already in with Josh, so do what you want to do.
Hey, man. Thanks again. We'll catch you soon, Josh.
All right. Thank you. See ya.
Man, that was awesome. I got to tell you, I was really surprised when he said start with a duplex. I mean, it makes sense, right? You start small. Yeah. Don't go huge right off the bat. Don't learn how to swim in the deep end of the pool. But that makes a lot of sense, I guess.
I agree, because think about it. If this is your first time in real estate, you might not even like real estate, right? So getting into duplexes, getting out of a duplex is a lot easier than getting in out of the other bigger stuff. So, but it makes sense. I like how he was talking about it. Give some really good pointers, like the rules of thumb. Did I say that right? Rules of thumb.
I mean, yeah. Without the accent, it might have been right, but we'll just put
there's
subtitles.
A thumb. If you look at that video on YouTube, you see, there's my thumb.
That's your thumb.
There's a rule around it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, man, and so I agree, man, and apartment investing is something that appeals to a lot of people because of the economies of scale. You have the ability to put on one roof, one piece of siding versus having 10 single family homes, and so it's a very attractive to people. And I love what he talked about as well, where it's clear that he loves what he does, and this is something that he's passionate about. He mentioned serving wonderful people, which I even asked, I've heard these rumors about people that are in apartments are harder to deal with, and he's like, no, man, he's like, that's not true at all. And quite honestly, that might be a reflection of his management style and the culture he's created with his company that is filtered down to the tenants. Like, they actually feel that love from his people and act differently, right? We've talked about mindsets in the past, and you act in expectation with what people view you as, and so that's been really cool too, because that's sometimes a deterrent to people. They're like, oh, I don't want to fix toilets and this and that. And that's not at all what Josh's experience was.
Right, and we didn't really touch much on this in this particular episode, but I think, and I know Josh personally, a lot of the things that he does, the reason why he's so successful is because of the culture that he creates in his company, and not just from his management style, right, but trickles all the way down to the tenants, right? That culture trickles down, and I think that is one of the biggest reasons why he's been so successful. Like, he talks about having 2% vacancy rate. Well,
yeah, it's unheard of.
You have 5% or 10% vacancy rate. Why is that, right? Well, it has something to do with culture, I think, right? Because people would want to live where it's nice to live, right? When things are good, when they treat me right, and all those cool things, right? So I think there's something to be said on how the culture is, how he is. You can tell that it trickles down from him personally, and how he looks at relationships with people, right? I think that's another big takeaway from this episode about relationships.
Well, I think it was interesting too, because he also said how he's like, and he didn't use this exact word, but he said he's like, you got to be careful with those sob stories. And so I think he's compassionate yet fair and firm. And so he recognizes that he's got to be fair to everybody, right? You got to give everyone the same treatment. And that way you create expectations. You're in a this doesn't I don't want it to sound negative, but you're kind of training your tenants on how to act. Right. And so what kind of behaviors are tolerated and which kind of behaviors are discouraged and encouraged. And so all of that comes together. I also really like what you said earlier in the intro, which was like he's living his life and doing this in addition to being successful in business. And so he's able to do both simultaneously. He mentioned he works, 20, 30 hours a week. And for him, that's kind of the sweet spot, somewhere within that range. And he has a real business, man. He said he has a staff of 40 people for over 800 units. So that's roughly one person for every 20 units he has. And I know it's not 40 managers, but he has a real business here. So he's not only pouring into his tenants, but he's pouring into his staff members as well.
Yeah, I know that for a fact. He does pour into his team members, right? He wants to help them, he wants to mentor them and all that kind of stuff. And I think that speaks volumes for that. And, it gives you an idea that, like, listen, this is not impossible, right? This stuff is possible if you start being very diligent. Remember when you talked about the vision, right? He talked about how he is diligent on keeping that, right? He's got those kind of rules that go around it to make sure that he keeps that vision in place. And I think it's one of the biggest reasons why he was able to build a company that he did.
Yeah, that's the objective benchmark that he uses in running the business, as well as making sure it's congruent with his life. If you missed the first episode with Josh, that's when he talks about how we actually got into this. I'd encourage you to go listen to that. He talks about how he started from basically nothing and working for almost nothing for another person for 10 years before he got into this on his own. So you guys are benefiting from all of that knowledge plus what he's discovered on his own. But if you want to hear that episode, go back and listen to that. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love to hear from you. Please leave us a review or a rating. It helps us quite a bit in letting other people know about the Lifeonaire Show. Quite honestly, it lets us know what we're doing well as well and what we can improve on. And so we appreciate the time and effort that you are taking to do that. Also, if you want to be part of the Lifeonaire conversation, learn more about investing, be part of the Lifeonaire community, go on over to the free Lifeonaire app. You can download it wherever you listen to apps. This would be, I guess, in the iTunes store or Google Play, or you could do the desktop version on lifeonaire.com/app. That is free. And by the way, in there, we have a special gift for you. It's called the Lifeonaire Fast Start Kit. So you can start working on your own vision. We have training on the 4 stages of financial prosperity and a bunch of other things that you will find valuable. And that's our free gift to you. So go ahead and you can grab that. As always, we are very grateful for your viewership, or whether you're checking this out on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. And so please know that is appreciated. We can't wait to see you next week. Everyone, take care, have a great day, and live free.